message we got about on the meeting, so being at 1:15, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. I see Amy, but I don't see Alan.
Oh, we got a message that it wasn't supposed to start till 1:15?
On the agenda that came out,
Oh,
I thought
but
it
it's
was 1
1.
but it's 1 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I was just looking, I was gonna say, I see Alan and Bill, but I don't see, there's Alan, okay. How about, Tricia's here, I see her, Danny?
How about, since you're leading the meeting, I'll message Danny. Just to,
Okay. Doug's here, got him, Alan. Let me. While we're waiting for the record, we got 2 phone numbers down here. 1151.
1151 is my phone, Ron. This is Doug.
Okay. And 1112
is Daryl.
Daryl,
isn't
the
it?
engineering
Daryl,
technician.
okay.
Yes.
And I've messaged Danny, so he should know you're getting ready to start.
All right, you were saying there was a big tree down on Spring Street, was it?
On Spring between Bell and Gillum, and our folks are already out there. I saw Roger and his guys cutting it up. But it was one of those really huge trunk size ones. So,
Yeah. Alan, have we had any other occurrences of trees or branches?
Yeah, we have a few branches and smaller trees around town currently that they're on. They had College Street closed off uptown for a brief period of time. Hopefully that's been opened back up due to something that had blown into the power lines, and they had contacted Duke Energy Progress to come and deal with it. So the street was closed in the meantime for public safety purposes while that was taken care of. Right now, that's the only kind of reports I'm receiving. Hopefully nobody has lost power. I think that's probably one of the most important things at the moment. I've not gotten any reports, and everything here at the city is still moving along. We've still got power and still operating, so hopefully everybody else is too. We'll keep our fingers crossed for the rest of the day.
yep.
I've noticed my lights flicker a couple of times, but that's been the limit so far, so we're lucky. All right, I see Commissioner Curran is online, so we will go ahead and get started with the Public Works meeting. Agenda topic today is to continue discussion on College Street and Main Street medians. Also look at the city contribution to downstream sewer needs for the development of US 15 South. And then the Main Street bulb outs and possible additional downtown bulb outs are the 3 things to be talking about. So let's start first with the College Street and Main Street medians. So Alan, you want to kick it off or go to Amy?
Amy, you want to continue the conversation from, what was that, Monday or Tuesday? It's all run together.
Tuesday.
Sorry,
It was
Tuesday, okay.
Time in the last year, I don't know. Yeah. And I have, Bill has joined us again. He was on the meeting the other night, earlier this week, whatever day it was, to assist with this. And we can put some of the diagrams back up, and with any luck, we won't actually be bombed again with some contributions from outside sources that had some interesting doodle techniques. But we, a number of folks were at the meeting that we held, both residents, commissioners, some businesses, folks that wanted to provide some of their input on what we were proposing to do. I think the overall consensus, that I got from the meeting was that the majority of people that spoke were in favor of the median moving forward on College Street. And we can throw a picture back up there if y'all would like to kind of take a look at what we were proposing again. And let's see if I can.
Amy, while you're doing that, let me just add that I've had a couple of phone calls since our meeting, both in favor of the medians.
Okay, so that's good. It sounds like a number of folks. I've had some responses, both positive and negative, but more positive than negative. All right, so can y'all see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so for any of you that were not at the meeting the other night, the median on College Street, we are looking at starting it just north of Watkins. This would be the bank right on the corner of Watkins and College, and we would be starting the median just north of that. This is McClanahan Street, and we would be providing turn lanes. If we zoom in a little bit on those areas, you can see that where the rounded portion is, that is what is going to be a grassed or landscaped median. And then we have a area for turn lanes on either side if necessary for turning left at intersections. And if we go down to an example that McGill provided, this gives you a little bit more of a visual showing how you would have the end caps similar to what you would have at Main Street, Spring Street, MLK, where there's some flowers at the ends on both of them, some grass in the middle. Unlike some of the other medians, since we are installing water and sewer utilities in this median, we would not be planting any trees. Some small shrubs might be allowed in the median, but nothing that's going to put down a substantial root system that could at some point destroy the utilities. And the whole point of, one of the points of putting the utilities in the median is to get it away from the trees that are on the sides of the road that have got some size and some age to them that folks would really like to save. So, this is really, I think, will improve the aesthetics as you come into Oxford. I think that it's going to, either be a wash on the cost or a cost savings for a water and sewer project that's being funded through DWI and can provide some additional safety as there is, road narrowing. Individuals tend to speed less. If you got 50 feet wide of asphalt, you don't really have a problem opening it up and seeing how fast you can go down the road. You're a little bit more tentative typically if you have less asphalt there at your disposal. Do we have any comments on the College Street median or questions about that?
Amy, this is Pat. Just one question, and help me if I'm looking at it correct. The two cars represent parked cars on the side of the street, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hypothetically, if at 2:30, and if we go back to normalization, whatever that is, Cradle is getting out of school and there is an accident, say just above one of the parked cars, how would our ambulance get through, that time of day? It's just a thought. Just a thought.
I was actually having a conversation with the fire chief this morning regarding the medians and
Uh-huh.
was looking at, their ability to respond. And one of the things that they say they do currently, if necessary, is they, at the intersection where there's a break in the median on, say, MLK, they will go onto the opposite side of the road into basically oncoming traffic, working with PD to try to stop that oncoming traffic. One of the things, Bill, I haven't mentioned this to you yet, that he and I discussed is the possibility of putting some rolled curb on that median in, say, the center section. So if there was, let me go back to that other screen. So if we have standard curb and gutter for the majority of the median, but have some rolled curb in the middle and have that as a break in the shrubs, if we do put shrubs, that they could even use the median to go from one side to the other mid-block. And so that would be something, as a design feature that we could consider.
Thank you.
I think it also would help to keep in mind that during the morning and then afternoon hours, we do have a policeman on site at the school.
Well, that's a great point. That's a
Great
great
point.
point. Can I ask a further question? One is a general one for the median. What is the width that we have? And then I have a follow-up at the Cradle location. So what is the proposed width?
It's 10 feet from face of curb to face of curb.
10 feet wide from base to base. Okay, thank you, Bill. And am I correct in thinking that actually the section that you're showing, Cradle School, is to the far left of that entrance driveway? And then in the graphic design that you have, it is on the second line that starts with the A border and the B, that middle line. So is Cradle School. So when there was the question that came up, so am I correct that this is the area of Cradle School that you're showing?
Yes.
Okay. So when the question came up about the kids crossing the street, can we plan at that crosswalk to the main front door? It looks like can we plan an island, a paved section, whether it's bricked or whatever, that is a walkway, so that when kids and parents are crossing, and even our traffic officer could be placed at this way station in the center of the median at the crosswalk?
I would say that's something we would need to discuss with DOT, since we'd be formalizing a pedestrian crossing that's not at an intersection. I'm not saying that it can't. It's just something we would need to have a conversation with them. And I think if we did that, we would also need to put some pedestrian warning signs and some flashing lights there, just to make motorists aware of the fact that there's potential for a crossing. Put the school crossing sign with the flashing arrows or flashing lights.
And it is a crosswalk now.
I'm
I mean,
trying to pull that up on Google Maps right now.
That's a crosswalk where the PD usually has, that's when people are referencing the police officer when school is starting and letting out. That's where they are, Bill.
But it's not at an intersection.
Right, but it is the crosswalk, that's the main crosswalk for
Exactly.
the school. And so that's why I was saying that median, and I've seen that done before, that, the grass stops and then you have like a concrete or bricked area or whatever right in the center of the median. So it's actually safer than it is right now, because right now the officer is in the middle of the street at that crosswalk.
And
Right.
Right. And since it's already there, it shouldn't be an issue to keep it, but we would most likely want to drop the curb there and have that as a concrete section so that we're ADA compliant.
Right.
You could get to the middle as in a wheelchair and have that same area of refuge versus leaving the school and getting out to the center and then not being able to get out of the way and onto the meeting.
Exactly. Thank you.
And one thing that, with regard to the design that we're showing you, this is something that McGill put together real quick for the purposes of these meetings. Obviously, if we move forward with it, we'll look at the design, any existing crosswalks or intersections that, does Forest need more of a turn lane than Rectory Street, items like that. I didn't want Bill to spend a significant amount of time on designing this if it was not something we moved forward with. So we will look at some of these items in more detail if this is something the board wishes for us to proceed with.
Thank you.
And yes, here's the crosswalk that you were mentioning, if my map will come up. So,
Ron, I've got a comment or two.
okay.
I'm totally in favor of the median. I heard a lot of concerns the other night. I didn't hear any that couldn't be solved, taken care of, such as parades. I don't know why you couldn't still have the Masonic parade down one side. So I don't see those a problem. If the ambulance, I've never understood why the ambulance goes through the middle of town anyway. They could just as easily turn on Hayes Street, Alexander, and go down Broad Street to get out. It would be just as fast. The crosswalk at the school, it's already there. It's not ADA compliant, but it
It's
goes
not.
across and goes up 3 or 4 steps. Would that have to be changed? By just putting a median in, we're not changing the access to the school.
They have another access for ADH compliance at that school, either by the library or coming near where their cafeteria is.
Yeah, I know that. So yeah, I don't see why that would change the crosswalk.
If you wanted the crosswalk to be close to where the ADA compliant area is for that school, I don't know, but you have, I recall 2 entry points for that school for compliance.
Where the mayor was talking about, there's already a crosswalk there, and then you
Right,
go up steps. I don't know why a median would change that.
Well, you could make the median right there, as was mentioned earlier, I think by Bill, very easily make that ADA compliant.
Yeah, all you got to do is drop the curb so it's level, so people don't have to climb up onto the median. Just level for the
I
median.
guess they would get to the sidewalk, Danny, and then go another way, because you're right. I see what you're saying.
All right, but as I said, I'm 100% in favor of the median.
Yeah, honestly, I would think that anything that, we do as far as a median and working on these crosswalks, especially at the school, it would be an improvement to what's currently there.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, even if it's not ADA compliant on the existing curves, we certainly wouldn't want to have a barrier in the middle of the median that would stop somebody from traffic.
Exactly.
Okay, it sounds like Bill and I need to proceed with finalizing a design and working with DOT and the Division of Water Infrastructure to move forward with shifting the water and sewer to a median and creating that as part of this project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Because I would join
Yeah.
Danny being fully in favor of the median project.
Is that sufficient for you, Amy, to move on? We don't have, just to have the go-ahead from the committee and those present?
I think we have a majority here, so I think that, you know, that's going to be sufficient since the vote would come in favor of this were we to go to the full board.
Well, at this point, I think we would need to hear from Commissioner Tovey, Fields, and Gilreath. Their
Well,
thoughts.
I'm really in favor of this median. I really am. As long as we can get that drop curb in the center, yes, it's going to be so much better. I'm in 100% in favor.
I'm in
Mr.
favor
Gilreath?
with,
I am pleased that the citizens that live along that street are in favor of it, and personally, I think it's the right thing to do. So I'm in favor. We could have a vote.
Okay, Commissioner Fields?
I'm in favor with further designs of it. I'm very much in favor of it.
Yeah. Particularly to save us money as far as
Yes.
infrastructure. I
Absolutely.
think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr.
Amy?
Chairman, if I may, I would recommend that, you know, we treat this like we do other items that the city moves forward with coming out of committee meetings, that this committee essentially now provide that recommendation to the full board. Yes, for their review and approval. Having heard some of the comments from a few other board members at Tuesday night's meeting, you know, it may not be completely in agreement. I also want to make the point that if you captured the fact that, you know, we're not only seeking approval from the DOT, but with DWI, this is really a city-initiated project. It is not something that we're piggybacking or doing anything else with the DOT. They would simply be granting us the approval to make these modifications on what is a DOT maintained street. College Street is not in the project targeted for, you know, upcoming resurfacing next year. So this is something that the city is initiating. It's something that the city would be doing, and we've got to get not only DOT's approval, but DWI's concurrence as far as a change in the design that we had originally submitted to them for the utility relocation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I had assumed that it would be going before the whole board. But the key point I wanted to make at this point in the discussion was for Amy and Bill to have a clear picture that we wanted to go ahead at this point.
Well, could I ask one follow-up question to what Alan just shared with us?
Yes, ma'am.
When he said that it's not part of the resurfacing initially planned, does this mean that other streets are going to be delayed, or how, what are you really saying?
No, I don't, nothing. We're trying not to delay anything. That's why we're trying to bring this information to you and the public and move it as quickly as possible. You just have to realize what's in the proposed resurfacing initiative for both the Department of Transportation and the city. You know, the city's portion is to do the work on city maintained streets. This is not a city maintained street. This is a DOT street. And the Department of Transportation basically makes the determination of the condition of all of the streets that they maintain in the Oxford area and decides which ones need to be addressed as far as a resurfacing initiative. This one is not in that resurfacing initiative. So that's another point that we need to make today as we kind of transition from looking at the College Street median project to the Main Street project itself. They're really two separate entities because the Main Street one will be in the resurfacing initiative for the Department of Transportation. So it's a little bit more pressing at the moment, quite honestly, to get something established as far as a direction, because the DOT is in need of a lot of the information that we need to provide as far as painting and a number of things, including the traffic circle and extending the median a little bit up Main Street and those types of things, because they are wanting to move forward with providing us with a memorandum of agreement for all of these things that we've been talking about, trying to work with them and piggyback on with them. And it's all, you know, kind of time essential to get those done expediently, quite honestly. So I know that may be a perfect transition into the Main Street design and concerns that we had or the board had.
Well, Alan, I don't think, well, I'm still not clear on what, I'm not sure that you answered my question. Did you say DOT maintains College Street, but Main Street is a city street?
Uh-uh.
No.
No.
Main Street's also a DOT street, but it is in their rescheduled, or excuse me, resurfacing initiative that they have coming up. There are a number of streets that, you know, are in and around the Oxford area that are DOT maintained that are not in that resurfacing initiative. They're not doing them all. They're doing what they've come up with that they believe needs to be done at this time until such time as they do the next one, whenever that may be.
Well, what I thought I heard you say that we were not necessarily piggybacking, but we needed to get approval from DWI as well as DOT to do College Street.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, no, DWI is the funding agency that is providing us the funds to do the replacement of the water and sewer lines down College Street. And if you recall, that initial design required us to, you know, where we were going to put the utility lines was either taking up the sidewalk or going down the street. And doing either one of those meant that we would be coming back in and resurfacing or patching the street at our expense. And our expense, the funding was coming from largely DWI to do just that. So then we started thinking of an alternative way to accomplish the same thing, but save the trees, not tear up the sidewalk, and save cost and expense on patching the street, because College Street, as Bill mentioned, I believe Tuesday night, you know, you're talking of 13, 14 inches of asphalt and base there, and it's very expensive to make those repairs to DOT standards. And the median installation with the utilities would be a less expensive alternative to that.
Okay,
So it's going to be on our dime. That's the bottom line. College Street's on our dime.
So all we're doing is rearranging the time frame in which we would have done the water and the sewer for College Street. The paving would have gotten done, but then at some point, we didn't have it on the schedule for the water and sewer, but now that we have the opportunity to get it done while they're doing the resurfacing, we're moving it forward a little bit.
No, not for College Street. College Street is essentially utilities. It's all utility related and not resurfacing for College Street. Everything on College Street is associated with the relocation, replacement of those utilities that are in the DWI funded project. And I can't remember the number. Amy can help me with that. But all of that is related to the replacement, renovation of utilities and relocation of them, which we are talking about now, potentially putting in a median running down the middle of the street, which of course is something that the DOT is going to have to approve, because you're putting, or you're changing the traffic and the flow of traffic on a DOT street. So they have to be included and they have to approve. But it has nothing to do with resurfacing College Street.
I got you.
Am I correct in thinking there is also an unintended benefit to this design, that it will help because we're replacing asphalt with permeable surface, that we'll get a little bit of stormwater benefit out of the design?
You should, with grass and dirt.
Certainly ain't going to hurt. I'll put it that way. I don't know how much benefit it'll actually create as far as being able to measure, but it won't hurt.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this topic? Amy, do you feel you have what you need at this point?
I think Bill and I can tentatively move forward with the conversations with DOT and DWI and the design, and we will see, wait for the full board approval before we make anything official with respect to the design. So I think we can
Okay.
move forward with that. So thank you.
Thank you and Bill, both of you, for all the work you put in on this, and Alan for your oversight on all this also. Let's move on to the city contribution to downstream sewer needs for the development of US 15 South. I'm assuming that's the PUD.
Well, if we can, while we're talking about medians, is maybe shift over to the Main Street median and
The
I don't
bulb
know.
out.
and the Main Street bulb outs, if that works for you.
Yeah.
As Alan started to mention, the Main Street improvements are tied to the DOT resurfacing project. DOT had requested that they get information from us in October as to what we wanted to include in that resurfacing project. So since we are at the end of October, they are starting to get impatient as to what we want to include as part of that project. As part of the downtown master plan, there was a median shown in the vicinity of the post office and the church, and a roundabout at the intersection of Spring Street and Main Street. And as a number of y'all know, DOT has decided that they would move forward with, at our request, on their dime, to design a median at the intersection of roundabout at the intersection of Spring and Main. One of the things, if you look closely at this intersection, when you zoom in, it's a little bit fuzzy. You can see this is an existing median here, and we have an existing median here for College and Spring Street on one side of each. They are adding small divider medians to direct the flow of traffic into the roundabout. And when we saw that they were adding these medians to direct the flow of traffic, one of the things that we went back and looked at was the fact that Main Street was supposed to have a median per the downtown master plan. And so if we have the roundabout here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so folks can hopefully see it a little bit better. We are looking at just painting, not actually a physical median, but just painting a median from Little John back to Spring Street. So you'd have the divider medians that DOT is installing that would have the curb and gutter be a raised median, but then a painted median in this vicinity, and look at the addition of a crosswalk between the post office and the church, and redoing the parking in that vicinity. And this was a sketch that Bill came up with pretty quickly. And once again, these are things that we aren't at final design until we get approval to put the finishing touches on it if we want to move forward with this. But if we want to do this, DOT has said with their resurfacing project, the way they paint the lines back on the roads after they resurface is to take a Google map, look at the Google map and see where the lines are, and they paint back exactly what's there. If we don't want them to put back exactly what's there, if we provide them with a painting scheme, they have said that they would be willing to incorporate that. So this is one of those suggestions. If we go ahead and paint the median there without doing the construction, so we're not, if we wanted an actual median, the city would have to pay for it. Painting it, DOT will incorporate into their cost. So this would move us towards what the downtown master plan suggests of crosswalks and medians, paint things the way that we want to see it in the future. And then if the city at some point down the line wants to, one at a time, do a the installation of a median or bump out, we would already have the striping in place. And if y'all have ever looked at a road where they've taken the striping up and put it down in another place, or done that with a parking spot, then you're like, which is the old line, which is the new line, where are we at, you know? So painting it now, even if we don't do something for 5 or 10 years, will be to our benefit. A lot of information there. Did that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Any questions, or, you know, is this something that the city would like for McGill to proceed on getting a final design on this? And this is also working in conjunction with the DOEDC and Mary regarding financing the engineering fees to provide this design, because we do have to actually pay for the design. We don't have to pay for the paint. So it's, you know, we're coming out ahead, but we do still have to contribute.
Danny, do you or Mary have any comments on this?
Oh, I like the idea. I would be in favor of an idea of putting a permanent median in there. And I was wondering if there was an idea of what that would cost, and if it was
Sorry, my question.
power bill money could be used to pay for something like that.
Yeah, that would be my question as well. I would prefer a permanent median there initially, but it's we need to know the cost, of course, involved. It could be as simple as just a row of curbstones, maybe. I don't know, but that would be my thought. But it comes down to cost.
Well,
So
the-
we need to keep in mind that the Powell bill funds may be used to help pay back some of the debts and other cases that we have, so.
Right.
I think it's something that we can explore as far as potentially asking Bill to help us understand the potential cost for the installation of that median. Right now, what we don't know, and is still a bit of an unknown factor, is, you know, what that pricing is going to be for the city's resurfacing project. All that ties into what we would seek to borrow from a financial institution like we've been talking about to do our resurfacing initiative. I don't know if it, you know, if it came in better than we expected. You know, price of oil and potentially asphalt is down right now. If that held out, you know, I think there's the opportunity there for that potentially to be included, depending upon just how much it is. And I'm sorry, I can't venture a guess there, but I do agree that, you know, the appropriate time to do it would be while it is being resurfaced. And honestly, you just about have to put it in there before the DOT comes and does their resurfacing for it to be the most effective.
Agree with that.
One thing I want to, you know, make everyone aware of that is DOT has said that they will do painting, you know, that we asked them to do. They have agreed to do the roundabout, and they've agreed to the bulb out, but we need to be cautious that if we start asking them to add too many things to the project that are not resurfacing, because their project is supposed to be, we put asphalt down on top of asphalt. Building medians, curb and gutter, bulb outs, that's not part of a resurfacing job typically. And if we ask for too much, and Bill and I will have to play this by ear and kind of, you know, ask them a question and see what their response is. If we ask them to do too many things that are not resurfacing, they may just tell us, well, why don't y'all go out and do your own project and not work with us on our project, because you've got all these things that you want to do. So, you know, we wish you well, go do it on your own. So, you know.
It may be a situation if we choose to do the median, once we better understand the potential cost of it and where we stand, with what we're going to borrow and the overall total cost of our resurfacing initiative, it may be a situation where we would seek to hire a contractor to just come in and do that median project and have it, there a week or so, whatever, before the DOT is scheduled to come in and do that resurfacing. So I
But
think
we
it's
do know
something that
that
we
if
just
they
need to
do
check a little
resurface
further.
it, they'll paint it back the way it was if we had the median in there. Right?
Yep.
And then
If we
we
don't
just
let them
have-
know what we want, they're going to come in and do exactly what we got.
what we got put on there. If we did that and then in the future decided to make it a permanent median, we could do that.
We could.
That to me
We
would
could.
be the best choice.
Might be a little bit more expensive. I don't know, but yeah.
Well, I said I
One
was in favor
additional-
of the median. I didn't suggest asking DOT to pay for it. I suggested we could look at power bill money, but I am in favor of painting it and putting it down with the paint.
Okay, I want to make sure that everybody understands also on Main Street, where the crosswalk is, there is not a crosswalk there currently. And there is going to be, if we do that crosswalk from the church to the post office, there are some parking spaces that we will lose. We won't lose as many because when they do as I understand, the width of the parking spaces are a little bit smaller. But understand there is not a bulb out or a crosswalk right at that location. It's up at where the Spring Street. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware of that based on the discussions that we've had with parking and the number of parking spaces that are in downtown.
Okay, any other comments on this?
I have the same one that I made before that I just want to reiterate it. First of all, I want to say I think this is outstanding. This is a wonderful way to kind of take a step forward on our master plan and the concepts in it and do it in a manageable fashion to get these ideas literally onto the street. So I want to thank you tremendously for the work that y'all have done to get us to this point. And I just would, again, entreat you all, as Bill mentioned, that if we wanted to improve the color design from the industrial yellow, which I don't think will enhance Oxford, the number of spots where we're suggesting do this, that if we could ask for, I think Bill said in it, encroachment agreement so that we could add our own colorful improvements. I think that would make a world of difference in terms of the appearance and how much the public appreciates it.
Okay.
One question and concern that I have, if we're going to have the roundabout there and we're going to have traffic coming from all directions and you're not sure exactly where they're going until they decide to follow whichever path in the roundabout, with the crosswalk there, wouldn't it have somewhat of a way of impeding the flow of traffic going through and around the roundabout? And then the point of entries for the roundabout, we have the post office on one side and the church on the other side. Would we really be utilizing that crosswalk enough to warrant it being there? And in my mind, losing the parks and impeding traffic, we may need to have traffic flowing just a little bit, just because the roundabout is going to slow you down a little bit and impede your view a little bit. I'm just curious, why is there a crosswalk there?
Well, we're losing the crosswalk, which would be at the end of that street.
Say that again, Danny?
There's a crosswalk
At Little John.
Main Street. And
Yeah,
we're
there's
losing
one at
that
Little John.
No, the one at Main and
Spring
Spring.
Street.
We're losing that one.
In the roundabout.
That's right.
So
there-
What it looks
Not
like.
in the
there's one-
roundabout,
But there's one coming from the post office across to the library.
at the corner.
Exactly. And then
So
there's another one further up coming from the library and the post office.
she makes a good point. Are we not going to be keeping crosswalks as they're indicated in the master plan at that intersection? I mean, I've seen rotary designs that also include the crosswalks.
The crosswalk addition between the post office and the church was called out for in the downtown master plan. We certainly do not have to add that crosswalk because you make a good point. We have a crosswalk down near Little John and we have crosswalks at the intersection of Spring. And if you'll give me just a second, I'll show you the new design at the roundabout for the crosswalks. So let's see and get oriented right. This would be Spring Street here with the existing median, and this is Main Street here. So let me rotate it to make it a little bit more.
I think one of those pages in that 15 pages of detail they sent to us has the crosswalks, Amy, I think, if I remember correctly.
So this is the crosswalks. They're shown on this diagram here. This is Main Street, so the church would be here and the post office would be here.
We're not seeing where you're saying here is.
Okay,
Is the
I
church
see
on
that
the
arrow.
upper right?
can you see my hand?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, barely. Okay,
So up here on the top right-hand corner is the church.
got it.
Top left-hand corner is the post office.
Yeah,
And-
Amy, if you go to page 11, it actually shows the.
Yeah, they're in there. It's in there somewhere. One of those pages had it.
There we go.
There we go.
Let's see.
That was, I think, the same page.
And so zoom in a little bit for y'all.
Yeah. And clockwise,
This is-
counterclockwise, 90 degrees.
Okay.
Spring,
Point to the church or the church or the post office.
the church is right here where my cursor is moving around in a circle.
The brick sidewalk is front of the church, the brick looking.
Right. Yep, that brick sidewalk indicates the church property.
So the bottom right is the church. I'm assuming the top right is the post office.
And Amy, is it correct that the WCR is wheelchair ramp?
Correct.
Oh, where's that, Mary?
Right there, the little circles at the crosswalks.
Okay, so that's it. The crosswalk is actually doesn't have cross hatching, but it is
Right.
before the concrete dividers. at
Yeah,
each-
right.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful.
WCR is indicating wheelchair ramp on both the church side and the post office side there
Yeah,
at that
they're,
crosswalk.
they're everywhere. They're at each.
Yep, down at Spring as well. Yep, all
Right.
over.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, well, the drawing, it did look like that crosswalk was there, but if you've got one there, then you may not need one in the middle,
Exactly.
because it would only be, gosh, what, 100 feet from one to the other.
I guess this decision to be made is, if you instill the crosswalk a little farther up in front of the church and the post office, is how many parking spaces you're going to lose, and the public's reaction to that. I don't know how many we're going to lose. It's at least 2 to 4.
Exactly.
It'd be at least 6. 3 on
Six.
6.
Okay. And the business community is already concerned about that, and I understand that.
Yep, we do too.
But other than the church and the post office, that middle
We don't need it.
crosswalk that I think I agree with Commissioner Curran may not be necessary. You're not in front of a business there. You are further away from the traffic coming out of the round table, but you're talking about the main offices for the church leading across to the post office.
I think you make a great point, but it occurs to me as I'm thinking about my own activity that I wonder, and I'm not advocating one for another, I'm just kind of pointing out that I religiously do not do a U-turn in front of the post office so I can park on the other side of the street. And if we have a painted median, but not a physical median, we do run the risk of still having people drive over, but they don't seem to be dissuaded by the double yellow line for doing a U-turn, and they may not be dissuaded by a painted median. But I do know that because I come from where I come from, I always park on the church side, and I'm guilty of jaywalking because I cross the street. So maybe that's the impetus. I don't think I'm the sole impetus, but it occurs to me that that might be why there was the suggestion of putting a crosswalk, is because people are not supposed to be doing a UE there, which we all know is the most common location for it. And also, though, are we not supposed to be jaywalking, which is my approach.
Yeah. And
So
I
I'm
think
not-
if we put them too close together, though, that we will have some other hazards that we unintended created.
True.
I mean, so I
True.
think anyway, but that's not necessarily our call to lay out all the specifics because we don't know what the law says.
I will say with the roundabout there at Spring and Main, the need to make a U-turn to grab one of those other spaces will be reduced a little bit because you can essentially make a legal U-turn now by going down to the roundabout and coming right back.
That's right.
Exactly.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Exactly.
Okay, any other comments on this?
I did. Ron, we discussed, and I don't know if we can talk to Amy, for several years, the parking places in front of the church are quite narrow. Could we look at those so that they would be more, I know the ones down the street are too wide. And I don't know, what is it, 12 feet they're supposed to be?
I thought that with the repainting that it was going to be a little wider.
Yeah, it's supposed to be, but if they take a picture of it, they're gonna go back just like it is.
No, not if we submit the striping plan. That's kind of what we're
Okay.
talking about. If we submit them a striping plan, they'll follow that
Okay.
striping plan after they resurface and create the clean slate.
Okay, that's good.
Okay? Again, thank you for all your work on this. So assuming nothing else on this, we'll move on to the sewer needs for US 15 South.
Were we supposed to have, was this the only thing, or were we supposed to discuss whether there was going to be an option to do a painting design for Williamsboro Street? And if I misunderstood that, I apologize from the agenda. I just wasn't sure.
So I guess, and I would need a little more clarity too. We want to move forward, if I understand correctly, with painting the median on Main Street and looking into what the cost might be if we wanted to do that with city funds ahead of the DOT resurfacing. Is that correct?
I didn't know we were talking about doing a permanent structure ahead. I thought we were talking about painting it as an initial step and then possibly in the future coming back. It's going to be us doing it either way. But
Okay.
maybe in the future to come back and do a more permanent structure.
But I
Okay.
think that Alan had mentioned that Danny had mentioned using Powell bill funds, and Alan had mentioned depending on how the money shakes loose for everything else, because paving costs might be slightly decreased because of the cost of asphalt. If there were funds, it could be at least looked at. Am I correct, Alan?
You are. I think the intelligent thing for us to do is to better understand the cost potentially of the installation of that median, and follow that little rabbit down the rabbit hole so that we know what we're talking about. And if we can get that in relative short order, we can get that back to you and let you know, because things will be coming into focus here before too much longer, as far as the timing, the memorandum of agreement, a number of things that the DOT is wanting us to have in addition to just this restriping schematic.
Yeah, I would be more in favor of a permanent solution. Do it now. We've been looking at the master plan for a number of years. It calls for a median. I prefer to do it now than procrastinate yet again on improving downtown. That's just my view.
Yeah, I think if you're really, trying to install some elements of the master plan and make the roundabout as effective as you can make it, and truly eliminate J turns and all those things, the installation of that median while they're resurfacing is going to certainly look a lot better. It's going to be effective once you get it in there. It's, the only question that we've got right now is how much is it going to cost?
That's right. Yeah. Let's look into it.
Yeah, hopefully we can get some good information.
And I don't know if people have seen, just to make sure that people know, Lori Dutra made a comment in the chat box thanking everybody for their work on this and getting this moving, and the manager, Commissioner Kern, as the DOEDC liaison, and engineering, and said that this is great, an awesome opportunity to work with DOT. But there is also a comment from Jack B, I don't know who that is, who says he's got some comments in there about mentioning again the DOT's complete streets policy to consider and incorporate several modes of transportation with building new projects or making improvements to existing infrastructure. So I just, he's got a long thing in there, and I, as well as a Word document, I think that he's attached. So I just want to make sure that people have an opportunity, and it looks like they are all in support of our doing what we can to move forward on all these ideas. I just saw that.
When I'm
Maybe, does that answer your question?
I'm sorry?
I asked Amy if she got her question or concern addressed.
I think we have a direction to move forward on the Main Street meeting, and somebody else had raised the question about, whether or not we wanted to incorporate any more of the striping in the plan. I'm having some challenges with my Adobe. It's decided to shut down on me, and I'm trying to get some of the sketches back up so I can share for downtown with regard to DOT will be resurfacing Williamsboro from College Street out to Revlon. And so obviously that area, the downtown master plan, where we have some things that we wanted to look at doing in the future, would be, once again, do we want to have McGill provide a painting scheme for those areas? And we do need to keep in mind that those funds for paying McGill, they like us, but they don't do this out of the goodness of their heart. you know, do we want to pay them to go ahead and design for possibly the bulb outs that are called out in the master plan for in front of the courthouse in Milano's? Bill, I don't know if you can share your screen. My Adobe has just gone wonky in that area. I lost everything that I had open. Love technology some days.
Yeah, I can do that. And I've also right now got up on my screen the DOT paving map that may help. So let me share that first.
And Lori Dutra has added a comment, adding Court Plaza and the Sunrise Biscuit Corner to painting or more would be really great. We have the new Orpheum in the county structure to highlight. So that is her comment.
Right. So that map that I've got up on the screen right now, you can see the blue lines are ones that DOT is paving as a part of their routine paving program. And the red ones are the city streets that are piggybacking onto the contract being let by DOT. So you can see, we were talking earlier that College Street is not a part of their program, but Williamsboro is, and Main Street is.
And Main Street and Williamsboro are just a small part of a much larger project. So, you know, I know some discussion happened the other night about, well, why don't we just delay it? There would be a lot of streets that would be delayed. Country Club, Ivy Day, Alexander, Spring Street, McClanahan, you know, obviously, you know, Pine Tree Road. We certainly want to see the resurfacing move forward by DOT on all these streets that they have proposed to do. In addition, the ones that we have shown in red as the city portion. So.
And Bill and I are working on a cost for repainting, what that would look like for the entire scope of the master plan, or at least for large portions of it. We have not finalized that yet, but we have had discussion about that.
If there is it possible, Mary, for you and Bill to have the discussion about the cost because of the time thing, just for the Williamsboro Street section going down to Sunrise, so that again, shouldn't delay DOT because they got to repave before they paint. But if we are able to affordably get design for the painting of the Main Street Master Plan concepts, then when they come through, we have at least again put all of that, and we can still deal with College, you know, Hillsborough Street and the other part, but as part of our agreement with DOT, it might be more affordable just to look at Williamsboro Street along with what we've got for Main, and then when they repave, we have an outline for our vision for those two streets.
Right.
I would support doing that because we've had so many delays already.
Yeah.
Weather, money, whatever you want to talk about it. You know, whatever we can get, fine, but let's don't start asking for so much that we hinder the progress. So I agree with you, Mayor. Let's look at that one block and see what you can do on that. But at the same time, let's try to keep progress going as much as we can.
Absolutely. That the thing is, if we don't want to slow down anything, but if we've got a design that we can get ready and it's affordable just to do that block, if we can find a way, then you know, I think it would be really great for our downtown.
Okay, anything else on this topic? All right, let's try one more time to look at this topic of the sewer needs for the developments on US 15 South. Amy, or
All right, well, I'll go back to the comment that my Adobe is not cooperating. Bill, do you have the Hatchers Creek presentation just as a, something we can kind of throw up there as a quick reminder of what's been discussed before?
Yes. Yep, let me see how successful I can be with sharing my screen here. So.
One of the things that, while Bill's looking for that, the developers for Hatchers Creek and the Lewis Street commercial development, we had a phone call meeting with them. I don't even remember, last week, first of this week, recently. And they are certainly all interested in moving forward with their projects. However, as y'all recall, when we looked at the downstream improvements that would be needed, this was not an inexpensive undertaking for either the city or the developers. One of the things that Alan and Bill and I have recently been looking at is our extension policy that the board adopted in 2001, and some of the requirements that the board indicated should be, who the responsibility was for infrastructure upgrades and improvements. And it does call out that developers are going to have some responsibility with regard to downstream improvements. And one of the things that we need to, look at, and I think that Hatchers Creek and Lewis Street developments are also, well, they may have the responsibility to contribute for their infrastructure upgrades, for their contribution to the capacity needs of either the water or sewer, if we are going to look at a holistic approach, because they certainly are not building out the entire area, that additional improvements are going to be needed in order to allow company, X to come in and develop further in this same sewer shed and be able to add to the capacity required at the Walmart lift station. The Walmart lift station and force main and the gravity lines that tie to it, either upstream or downstream, are some of the components that are the restrictions of who can develop and how much they can develop. And Bill has brought up some of the various costs and phases of those improvements on the screen, and we need to kind of look at what we want to do moving forward. And Bill, you want to kind of recap some of these alternatives and what they mean?
Right. So I jumped to the end of the book here, if you will, to show what we have in terms of potential costs for the upgrades, looking at different ways to serve the area there in front of Walmart where the Hatchers Creek and Lewis Street projects are proposed. And you can see the costs, for alternate A and C are pretty close. Alternate B is obviously the cheapest one, although where money happens in the projects are very different through the different phases. You've got phase one is the cheapest in alternative C and most expensive in alternate B, even though alternate B has the lowest long-term cost. So I can hopefully go back up here and we can run through these real quick just to remind you what we had. So this is alternate A, existing conditions in the upper left-hand corner, and then the way that the project could be built out through 3 phases to try and manage the cost in chunks. Ultimately, in phase 3, you would have the lift station that's in Hatcher's Creek that would drain gravity down through the adjacent property to get to Walmart, and then that would be to their pump station, force all the way back up to Industry Road, where then it would be able to flow gravity down to the wastewater treatment plant. And everybody here may know it, but we call this the Walmart pump station, but it's not just a Walmart pump station. This is actually the third in a series of pump stations that start all the way down at the rest area and get pumped back up until it gets to Walmart, where then that's the last one in the series. So it was not put in just for Walmart. It has multiple reasons for being there. So just to be clear, that's just a naming convention. That was the cost associated with it there. Alternate B, again, same thing. We're phasing it through, trying to manage the capital costs. But at the end of the day, what you'd end up with would be similar to alternate A, where you have the lift station, gravity down through the purple colored property to a upgraded Walmart lift station that would be a regional station, as well as receiving flow from the new developments and all the way down to the rest area. And then instead of trying to run it through the existing gravity sewers in town, it would be part of building a new force main along 85 up to New Commerce, and then flowing gravity down past the front of the new jail and eventually to the wastewater treatment plant. And then alternate C, similar in that the final version is just like we talked about in alternate B, where we have an upgraded Walmart pump station that goes to a force main along 85 up to in front of the sheriff's office and jail down into the wastewater treatment plant. The difference is the upfront costs are managed by installing some infrastructure that pumps up to Industry Road, but eventually that's a sunk cost. You would turn around and abandon that and flip to a force main down at 85. So that's why it's the lowest upfront cost, but highest overall cost. You still, in this scenario, would have the same thing as B, but you are building some temporary infrastructure to manage upfront costs. So, that gets back to this summary screen that again shows the different ways to approach getting service to Hatcher's Creek, Lewis Street, and all those properties along 15 down in the vicinity of Walmart. So again, alternate A is the highest cost overall. B is the cheapest overall, but has a higher front end cost. And alternate C is kind of in the middle. And it has a lowest upfront cost, but again, slightly higher long-term cost. That's kind of a quick Cliff Notes version of what we've covered in previous slideshows. So Amy or anybody else has some additional questions we want to dive into, we can answer.
Amy, would you remind me, please? We're looking at these costs, but these have already, some of these or all of these have already been planned and included, or are we talking additional?
Some of these costs where it talks about the PUD and Lewis Street, like it says PUD under alternative A, 2.3 million, and Lewis Street, 4 million. Some of those costs are what the developer is going to have to pay for the lift stations and infrastructure on their project within their property, not necessarily the off-site improvements. Bill, do you know, kind of a split on what is on-site versus off-site with those improvements?
Off the top of my head, no, but it's certainly the off-site is the biggest chunk of that.
So I know that, with the PUD, they had proposed one lift 2 lift stations initially, and now they're proposing 1 lift station. And so obviously the cost of a lift station on their property on site is something that would be 100% their cost. Where we need some contribution from Hatcher's Creek and Lewis Street for the Walmart lift station, you know, is because that is the regional lift station that will be providing the pumping capacity to not only them, but future developments. And as Bill said, the Walmart lift station is really an ironic name because the lift station was built before Walmart was ever thought of, years before Walmart was ever thought of. And so that was a kind of a misconception that, you know, the lift station was built to accommodate Walmart, and Walmart just happened to discharge to it when they built it. Lift station was there 5-8 years before Walmart was actually thought of and put in.
I have 2 questions if you're done, but not if you're not done.
Well, I can talk for a long time, so if you have questions.
Well, one is related to what you just said about that Walmart, you know, tied in obviously after the fact. Is it safe to assume that existing infrastructure, so like if we went with alternative B and took that force main up 85, then that opens up that area and makes it appealing to potential developers because that's, you know, in place versus looking at that area. You know, we had a presentation about land for development maybe a month ago, but there isn't any kind of connecting infrastructure right now. So I just wonder if the existence of the lift station there had anything to do with Walmart's putting a complex there.
The fact that there was the availability of water and sewer, I am certain played into Walmart's decision to locate where they did. Something the size of Walmart would want city water and sewer. They would not want to be on well and septic tank typically. So.
Thank you. And do we have, with the phases 1, 2, and 3, is there any kind of estimated timeline and with respect to when each one would be expected to occur?
That'd be driven by how quickly the developers' projects move forward. So it could go in and everybody sells out right away and they move right into another phase. And so it happens quickly. Or, you know, if God forbid the economy tails off, you know, they build phase 1 and it may be 10 years before phase 2 happens. So that's, I don't have that crystal ball, but you know, the expectation would be that they just keep rolling and building product.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things, and Alan may have studied the extension policy a little bit more in depth than I have, is the, you know, requirement by the city based on the 2001 resolution for adoption of the policy for the extension of water and sewer lines to residential, commercial, and industrial developments, including utility plan approvals, process assessments, city participation, funding requirements, and types of extension projects. And that was the name of the resolution. There is some indication that, you know, the developer is supposed to provide, you know, okay, we determine their portion is $1 million. They write us a check for $1 million, and we actually do the design and the improvements separate from anything that they are doing. And so, you know, whether or not they write us that check up front, or whether or not we, you know, look at something where the developer actually does the design and the improvements and we look at writing them a check. One of the things that's also in the policy, and we've, you know, has long been a written and unwritten rule, say you need to extend, the developer needs an 8-inch water line. The city says we need a 12-inch for future service. The city pays the difference between the 8 and the 12, and typically the developer is the one that does the design and the construction, and the city just pays the difference. So do we, as a city, want to be the ones that initiate the design and the construction for the improvements for the Walmart, force main, and, you know, the lift station and the force main and gravity lines? Or is this something we want to go back and ask the developers to incorporate as part of their project? Who pays who does the design, who takes the lead on this? That's one of the questions that we, you know, need to look at. And as these developers are wanting to move forward sooner rather than later, you know, we do need to determine how much money each one should contribute and how much the city is going to pull out of the water and sewer fund reserves for the future development. And one of the questions also is how our prior resolution fits with the new system development fee policy and that was adopted. There's a lot of information there.
I have a question. This has all been very interesting, but I'd be curious to know what factors we should be considering in terms of making the decision of what alternatives to go by. I mean, who can help us make the best decision? Because as I look at this, I have no clue which one would be best for the city. And my question is, what factors do we look at, and who can help us come to, you know, a decision on these alternatives?
That's kind of what I was going to ask. Amy, what's your recommendation?
Well, in looking at, you know, your lowest total cost in the long run, even though alternative B is front end heavy, you know, trying to look at, you know, am I going to, same thing with building something on your house, am I going to go ahead and, you know, absorb the biggest cost up front, but in the long run it's going to be a smaller cost? I think we can break, if we went with alternative B, we can break phase 1 into phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 1C, and you wouldn't have to do the entire $8 million at one time. One of our challenges, as Bill alluded to, is we don't have a crystal ball. We're doing a dance with the developers because, well, how fast are you expecting your build out to be? Well, how quickly can you have the capacity available to us? Well, what sections do you want to move forward with first? The townhomes and the apartments or the single family residential? We did get that they want townhomes and apartments first, but how many do you expect that you'll be building in round 1 in terms of, you know, what can we do as a step process? And it's very hard because nobody wants to show their cards first. And, you know, I think, you know, it's a little bit more challenging because you're doing this via Zoom meetings where it's a little harder to read the body language and see, you know, are they feeling like we're asking too much, or they don't think that we are going to move quickly enough, you know. But I think alternative B, and then further breaking it down into a phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 1C, that's where I would look at going. And I think I see Bill kind of nodding his head and
Yeah, we were breaking this down into big, similar work scopes, but there are things that could be done in steps. There is a little bit of capacity in the existing lift station. So you could start collecting the money for some of that phase 1 while they're doing some building, and as they need more capacity, then you initiate a 1A or a 1B and roll through that. So it's not that all of that has to be in one single contract.
I like the concept of
by the
breaking that
same-
apart. Because
And by the
just to turn
same,
around if
oh,
it's a-
sorry, Ron.
on phase C, I do not like building something only to turn around later and discard it.
I
And
agree.
by the same token, if phase 3 on alternative C, phase 2 is really expensive. And if, as Bill said, it could be 7 years, it could be 10 years, it could be way more than $7.1 million by the time you get to it. Whereas the dollars that we would be spending in alternative B for phase 1, those are the dollars that we know pretty much what the cost would be as compared with what it would take to do the same project 5 or 10 years out for the other phases. So to me, that is also an additional advantage. Alternative B seems to be, makes the most sense from an infrastructure sense and opening up on the other side of 85, but also the costs that are pushed out are much lower estimated costs.
And we certainly, have interest now and folks that are very motivated. The Hatchers Creek developer has completed their water and sewer and stormwater design of the plans. They've gotten to the point of, they need to know how many apartment buildings can they build in phase 1, because how much capacity do we have? And if we are moving forward with expanding, the wet well and upgrading the pumps and the lift station, how quickly can we get that permitted and in place so that they can move on to, okay, so they can build 10 apartment buildings in phase 1, and then they're going to have to wait, by the time you do design, permitting, and construction, it could be, 18 months, 2 years possibly before there's additional capacity there and available. So, they want to know how quickly they can build. But the fact that they are motivated and have completed their design, there is significant interest from the Lewis Street PUD. While it's only about a 5,000 square foot development now, conversations about their stormwater side has indicated that on the Walmart side, if you flip back to the map showing the different areas, Bill, that
Yeah, all right.
the purple area, I guess you could say,
Yeah. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the lower,
well, and actually across the street, so the Hatchers Creek is the
Yes.
yellow and the green is,
right,
and so
yeah.
across the street where that purple, pink, whatever color you want to call it, that land right in there, we have gotten some hints that, based on their wish to defer some stormwater development, that they're looking at developing that whole tract of land. So, there is certainly some interest in moving forward with a number of projects in that area, which also goes back to if there's interest now, let's put the bigger cost up front.
So what do you need from us, Amy?
I guess the question is, one of my questions is the city willing to dip into our reserves to move forward with financing some of the differences in what the developer needs to pay and what future developers would be asked to contribute, because what do we say, the first phase is $8 million. And if we ask, you know, we get participation from the 2 current developers of $2 million, but we need to do $3 million worth of work, is that something the city is willing to do? And we would have to tap into fund reserves in order to do that. We can get some more exact numbers, but you know, if the city's not willing to come to the table with any money up front, then we really need to be telling the developers that we're sorry, it's either 100% you, in which case they'll likely pull out, or you know, we're willing to finance or pay for what would be the other developer's costs, and need to, when the next developer comes in, say, okay, city paid that $1 million, that's your cut to buy into this capacity. You know, we paid for it up front, but you're gonna need to reimburse the city. Is that something the city is willing to do?
Alan, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a number of thoughts. You know, Amy touched upon the existing policies that we have, which go back to 2001, and looking at them again this week, it gives us the ability to basically go to the developer and say, you know, the impact that your development is having, not only on the property that you intend to develop, but on the existing city's infrastructure downstream to accept your flows and provide you with the utilities, is going to cost us X amount of dollars, and because you're the one making that impact, you're expected to pay. You know, we certainly have the ability to take that stance. The only complication that I see there is, you know, those utility policies were put in place in 2001. We just recently implemented system development fees, and you know, it's how those two interface in the eyes of the law that you know, we need to clarify. There have been a number of cases here recently in Leland and in Carolina Beach and in Angier where, you know, folks have successfully challenged the municipality over these impact fees, and created a scenario where the municipalities had to pay the developers back. You know, the other part of the scenario comes down to just how bad do we want these developments. And my personal opinion of it is I'm not willing to break the bank, so to speak, with all of the other projects and debt responsibilities that we are taking on, you know, to accommodate these developments in an area where, you know, our utilities are a bit limited, unfortunately. I think it may be the appropriate approach for us to, you know, take a good hard look at the number of units that are being proposed in any of these developments, and calculate the system development fees with the intent of applying all of those system development fees coming from those developments to the utility infrastructure needs, and then making sure that we understand legally where we stand with our existing policy from 2001, and can we potentially enforce that. Because what that does, if we can, is at least we have a position, I'm not going to call it a position of strength, but you can call it whatever you want to, when we're having these conversations with these developers, because the conversations right now are, you know, it's like they're doing us a favor, and having the expectation of the city spending a whole bunch of money to accommodate them, and they only want to do what they can do to get their development started and, you know, build the houses and sell the lots and make the money, and have an expectation of the city providing them with utilities to accommodate. And in my book, that's not how it works. You know, yeah, we want the development to occur, but I'm not willing to break the bank and raise rates on everybody else that lives in Oxford to accommodate these developments where unfortunately they have chosen to locate. We have some undersized utilities currently existing. So, there's a number of things that come into play, and I understand one of the questions that Commissioner Bridges had is help us understand it. And, part of understanding this is that if we go this route, one of the things that we really need to understand is what is the build out in this area that these utilities would be serving. So if we're looking at potential build out in that area, while we're making these improvements, be it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, whatever, we would need to better understand what is the build out in this area, and is it sensible and reasonable to do that now if we're going to proceed with these developers, so that the city would, pay the additional above and beyond. If we're talking about they would need an 8-inch and we would need a 12, well, would we need a 16 potentially for the build out in this area within the next 20, 30, 40 years? So those things need to be looked at as well when we're looking at projects like this. But I think the most intelligent thing for us to do right now is to take the position of, here it is, here's what we've got, here's our challenge, here's the cost, and you're the one that's impacting it. The city does not have this on its radar screen as far as going out and putting in all this infrastructure. We have commitments elsewhere all over town, as they can plainly see with every street being dug up, and see what their position is. Because right now it's been, the last 2 or 3 meetings that we've had with them, it's been a bunch of back and forth and posturing, quite honestly. And they're looking, of course, to serve their client and get it done as cheap as they can possibly do, and get as much on the city's bill as they can possibly get. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too long, but I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Do you have another meeting scheduled with them in the near future?
There is not one on the books currently, but it does not take long to get one scheduled. Now, with the alternatives that Bill looked at, he did look at, Miguel did, look at what is the build out in this area based on what the zoning is and the interest that we have heard to date, if it was different than the zoning. So the sizes and costs associated with these phase 1, 2, 3 improvements is for build out of that area, not just for this development.
Danny, Teresa, any comments?
No.
No.
Questions?
No, I don't like to be held over a barrel by developers. At the same time, we need, we probably need these developers, but they need us more than we need them. There's a lot to think about. I've got to think about this a lot.
Well, in general, I like alternative B with the phase 1, 2, and 3 part of that. But Alan's raised some key points on some things that and I think Bill touched on a couple also, that we need to make sure we clarify. That's why I was wondering when another meeting could be held and some of these things could be addressed.
And following up on Ron's comment and Amy's earlier comment, how difficult it is to have a meeting over Zoom, is it reasonable to propose a meeting in a space instead of upstairs in the engineering room, which is really more confined, maybe downtown in the training room, where the key players, meaning Bill, Amy, Alan, and the developers, can be spread around a little bit, but you do have a little more opportunity to get the benefit of face-to-face. Would that help at all?
I think if the parties are willing to come to a face-to-face meeting, it would be beneficial, and we'd likely hold it maybe either at the Public Works building or in the auditorium. The training room would likely not be large enough, but that's a good idea, is try to offer a larger space where folks might be comfortable with doing that. However, Bill and I are both encountering entities that it's just a wholesale, we only do Zoom meetings at this point in time. And so, whether or not these folks would, something else that, and I think it might be good to have, some of the commissioners attend some of those meetings, but I also have noticed an absence of the developers at those meetings. They are letting their engineers be their mouthpiece, and that works up to a point, but the developers are the ones that control the purse strings, and I think they need to come to the table, not just, their engineers. And we can certainly say that we need a meeting that they are in attendance in order to move forward with this.
Why don't we try to schedule a meeting, asking first for an in-face meeting at Public Works Building or wherever appropriate. If not, we'll have to fall back on a Zoom type meeting. But it seems to me we need to talk to them and address some of these issues as soon as we can without pushing it.
I would agree.
Well, as a commissioner, I would probably benefit most from pulling up all the ordinances and decisions that have previously been made that applies to this, so that we could all be better informed on what we're really agreeing to based upon what we've agreed to in the past. If we're dealing with something in 2001, I mean, that's very few of us that were part of this board consistently during that time period.
Buddy.
So can we?
I don't have any problem with, providing the board with that policy that we currently have in place, with the caveat to be added that, we need to follow up and check and see just how, the adoption of those system development fees potentially impacts that, because it very well may. That's some of the legal argument that is being utilized in some of these cases that I've seen recently, is that those impact fees that are being charged to development in certain areas were done really before the time frame of the clarification of the system development fee process that we went through. A lot of folks, if you recall, I think it was the case in Orange County that really spurred all of this, and heading towards the General Assembly, that some folks in Orange County were charging $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a piece for system development fees, whatever they wanted. And the Realtors Association went to the General Assembly and said, look, this is ridiculous. We need to get some clarity in regards to this, as far as uniformity across the state for these system development fees or impact fees that we're being charged. And that ultimately is what led to the system development fee rules that are now in the general statutes. And we followed that process to put ours in place. And it was very, very detailed, and looked at a lot of information as far as how each new residence impacts, your utilities. And that's what that was based on, and that's the reason why that was done. Everything that was done in 2001 was done prior to that. But there's a lot of language in there. I mean, it's, 14, 15 pages, whatever it is. And there's a lot of language in there that gives the city, the ability to tell developers that, you're making the upsizing of this lift station downstream necessary by your increased flows. And in order to do that, it's going to cost X amount of dollars, and you pay it. So it's how those two conflict and merge that we really need to better understand the position that we have before we have this meeting so that we are very clear with the position that we are going to take. And that would be my advice to this committee, is that we better understand that position before we meet with those developers so that we are very clear and we're on the same page in presenting that information to them. Because right now, I mean, we've met with them 2 or 3 different times, and the other development, I've forgotten the name of it, if there's even a name proposed for it, not Hatcher's Creek, but the one adjacent to it, that engineer's been on a complete and total fishing expedition trying to get everything that they can possibly get for as little as possible, and keeps posing questions of, well, this development is in front of us. We just want to hook a line to it, run our flows through it and send it to you, and we shouldn't have to pay anything, yada, yada, yada. So, it's been kind of a tightrope that we have been walking, because we do want the development to occur, but, we just can't break the bank, with our other 9,000 citizens that currently live here and pay their utility bills on a monthly basis, and whose would subsequently go up, I guarantee it, if we go out there and start spending, 8, 10, 14 million dollars to accommodate development like that. We're going to have some significant, substantial participation by those developers in order to really accomplish what they want to accomplish. Because what they want to accomplish is making money. That's the bottom line. They want to make money, and they believe that they can do so by developing in this area. And now it just becomes a question of how much money can I make, and if I can reduce the cost of putting in infrastructure or improving in infrastructure, my bottom line is increased. So that's really the issue that we're talking about here right now, and we need to get a good handle on what the city's position is.
Mayor, let me ask a quick question, then I'll turn the floor to you. What's it going to take for us to get into position, understanding what we're facing and getting ready for this type of meeting? What's that time frame, effort?
Was that a question to me or to Bill or to
whomever? We
whomever?
all agree we need to get some things better understood from our behalf and then have the meeting, but how long is that going to take to reasonably?
Hopefully not too long. I hope that by having Bill on this video chat that he's kind of gathering what needs to be done, and with his guidance and expertise, he can help us do that. We'll also be seeking some assistance from the School of Government on it about the 2 policies that we currently have and what the city's position is. I would hate to speculate that we could, do that in a week. It may take just a little bit of time in order to get that together and figure that out.
Hey, Alan, Alan, is there any type of policy or process in place where you can actually see what the continuity is within a region, so that the developers, if they're really interested in our area, they get boxed in by the continuity of everybody else in the area, give or take, a few policies, a few dollars here and there. But is there such anything that exists like that, so that they can't just shop around looking for somebody to bite and buy their product or develop somebody else's land?
Well, honestly, in my opinion, that's kind of what they do, based upon market and demand. Folks that are seeing a lot of development take place, like Cary and Apex and Holly Springs and Garner and Raleigh, and all of those folks that have been through all of this before, have put policies in place that really require and put the onus on the backs of the developers, because the price of the real estate down there has gone up so significantly, and developers keep coming back and proposing additional developments because they are going to make money. Now, in areas like Oxford and other areas of the state that have not seen a significant amount of development in the past, it's something of a new challenge, and it is something of, kind of walking that tightrope to continue to try to encourage development without running them off. and or breaking the bank with what you currently have. So it is, it's a delicate dance that has to be done. So in my opinion, places are different. They're different in what they will require developers to do. And I've seen it, in different areas that I have worked. There are some that, require a lot of the policies like what you see down in Wake County in the rapidly growing areas. And then some of the more rural areas, they want anything that they can get and are willing to do a little bit more for developers if they can afford to do it. And I mean, I hate to say it, but sometimes it even gets into the realm of, of politics. And we don't want to do that. We want to be as upfront as we can possibly be and say, here's what it's going to take, and work from that position.
Mayor, you had a question?
I have a couple, and I think, I'm gonna put myself, because I feel like my connection is going in and out. So I'm stopping the video, but thank you for asking. I have a couple of questions. One of them is our conversation enabled, or does the fact that these developments are in an opportunity zone, is there anything that we are able to do with that? That's one question.
I'll try to answer that one. I don't know that there's anything that we can take advantage of. I think that it is something that they are attempting to take advantage of as far as their taxes. And that's why those opportunity zones were established, is to allow some tax breaks for those folks out there who choose to do development in those opportunity zones.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I had, and I apologize if you made this clear earlier, Alan, and I just missed it. And then I think I have one other one after that. But when you were talking about the system development fees, which of course I feel very comfortable with, we established them according to the guidance from the state. Did you say that a piece of what you'll be looking at to kind of prepare us for the upcoming conversations is what kind of income we could expect based on the number of units and how that would offset some of our cost?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I understood that. So then it's a question of whether we try to collect more of that up front rather than them developing, 100 out of the 750, so that there's a lag on receiving the fee support. The other question related to that was the 1.9 million that's in there for Hatcher's Creek. Is that kind of, did we tell them that was the cost, or is this just potential? Was this part of the agreement that, because we had a special use agreement with them and gave them some allowances with respect with density and parking and so on? Is there dialogue room with that? And I'm sorry it's all jumbled together, but I didn't know where one question started and the other one ended.
Yep, Amy or Bill can kick in on this one, but I don't know that the city of Oxford has made any firm commitment with Hatcher's Creek as far as their contribution, other than, they have the understanding that the city does have system development fees. Our conversations and meetings with them have been more on what are the options, like option or phase 1, 2, 3, what those costs are. We've shared that information with them openly and freely. And, it's kind of getting down to the nitty gritty of the developer playing chicken a little bit, what's the city willing to do? And we're like, well, here's the cost and you're the one impacting it. What are you willing to do? And we need to get on firmer footing, and getting on firmer footing, it is going, here's the city's position. And what are you willing to do in order to get there? We're willing to talk about, the city putting in some money for upsizing those lines or upsizing the lift station and the wet well and what have you, then, that's certainly a topic of conversation that I think we need to have, because, we need to look at the build out in that area as well. But writing a blank check for development to come in and putting the burden and putting the onus on the rest of the city with everything else that we have going on, I don't think that's a wise course to take.
Am I correct in remembering that their original plan included 2 lift stations for the development at Hatcher's Creek?
Yes, ma'am,
Do
it
we
did.
know what that anticipated? Do we know what they anticipating having to invest to do that?
Yeah, we do. Amy touched upon that. They had submitted revised plans to only implement or build 1 lift station for Hatcher's Creek now. So that's certainly a reduced cost for them, but of course, they would be responsible for basically any of the costs on their property or in their development itself.
Right.
And
And what does it take to put in a lift station?
that depends.
So depends on the
I guess I'm-
size.
I'm trying to figure out whether there's a way to say, okay, if what we're offering takes away, if we go along with Plan B and it doesn't require the same amount of on-site infrastructure than they were already planning, that there ought to be some ability to negotiate to get that planned investment into the overall infrastructure that they need.
Yeah, I think there's always the ability to, negotiate, but initially you've got to start from a position. And that's kind of where we need to get is, here's the city's position, and get that reaction from the developers. And if it's, one of approval and yes, we can work with that, then great. And if not, then we start to figure out just how much give and take is necessary in order to make sure that all parties come out of this feeling as good as they can possibly feel, which means the city gets the development without breaking the bank, and we add citizens, and we add tax base, and we add people shopping in our stores and eating in our restaurants and doing all the things that we want to see. But and they get out of it selling the lots and making money.
Well, we keep coming back to this same point of we need to get our act together, get some
Yep,
questions
I think
answered,
so.
and then sit down either face to face or via Zoom with them and just see where we stand.
Yeah, I'm all for development and things like that. I want to see the city expand and things, but I don't want the rest of the city to be held hostage or pay a subsidy for the developers. I mean, it shouldn't cost the rest of the citizens anything. It's up to the developers. They want to develop, we can assist them, but it shouldn't be the responsibility of the other citizens, the rest of the citizens of this town. We got more important things that we need to build as well. I mean, it's just going to delay what we want to do in the future. So let's get with the developers in person.
Well, I think the key, going back, the key is going to be is to get our act together first, see what
Well,
we're
yeah,
willing to do.
yeah.
Then
As
meet
Alan
with
said, let's get our ducks in a row. This is what we can offer, and that's it.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? We're pushing 2 hours on this meeting, but it's been a good one.
I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank you, Ron, for directing the conversation, everybody's comments and questions, Alan, Amy, Bill. These are exactly the kinds of discussions that we need to be having and considering how we want to move the city forward. And I just really appreciate everybody's time and investment on this. And thank you, Ron, for allowing the discussion.
Yeah, we do as well. You remember our recent retreat where we talked about growing pains? That's what I'm talking about. This is what we're talking about. That's what we're discussing. So, a lot of it are good problems to have, and a lot of places throughout the state would kill to have those problems. But the good brings some of the bad, and some of the bad, we're facing right now. And that's what we're talking about. So hopefully we can find some solutions and overcome some of these challenges, and we'll be working to do just that. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I think Amy and I've got a 3:00 meeting that starts right now on Zoom, so we need to get out of here.
A lot of information has been provided for us to think about. We appreciate all the work that's been done. Amy, Alan, whatever we can do to help you, let us know. We'll be glad to help. Otherwise, we're going to stay out of the way. Danny or Teresa, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. You agree, Dan? Anybody else? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good job, Ron.